Imbecile!
Imagine going from the champion of Mortal Kombat to being killed by a character that nobody likes. Today we're discussing the most disrespected character in Mortal Kombat history, and his name is Goro. But first, here's a quick word from today's very special sponsor, Dash Fight, your one-stop shop for everything fighting games. Whether you love Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Dragon Ball FighterZ, or any fighting game in between, Dash Fight has you covered. But their newest stuff is my personal favorite, like this mental game guide by Video Games Yo. In case you're not aware, he's the best Shao Kahn player in the world, so you know this video is gonna be good. And then you have the top 10 MK moments, also a personal favorite of mine. You want to see some clutch moments, some amazing reverse 3-0 comebacks, they've got you covered. Or if you prefer other fighting games, you can check out Dash Fight's top 10. Once again, a fantastic playlist to keep you entertained for hours. Or maybe you just want to level up your gameplay. If that's the case, they have dozens of guides to choose from your favorite fighting games. Dash Fight's main goal is to empower the community and get everybody interested in fighting games, and I support that wholeheartedly because I also love to grow the FGC. So make sure to check out Dash Fight today for everything fighting games. All of their videos are epic, educational, and most of all, they're entertaining, so check out Dash Fight today. Alright, now it's time for Goro, a character who I'm sure needs no introduction because even the most casual fan knows a lot about Goro, but even so, allow me to reiterate here for the sake of the video. In the first Mortal Kombat game, Goro is the champion of Mortal Kombat. He's won 9 times in a row and has been the champion for over 500 years, and that's because originally there was a very big gap between each Mortal Kombat tournament. But my point is, Goro is godlike. In fact, he was hired because he is stronger than Shang Tsung, who had just lost in the previous tournament to Kung Lao. And that's the great Kung Lao, not to be confused with this Kung Lao who has a very sharp hat. The original Kung Lao did things the old-fashioned way by just beating you to death, and he did that to Shang Tsung, handed the guy his own cheeks. Shang Tsung took such a massive L that Shao Kahn had a tattoo on his butt cheeks that said property of Kung Lao. That's how disrespectful that defeat was. But guess who the great Kung Lao couldn't defeat? That's right, Goro was killed on the spot. Probably wasn't even that difficult for Goro because he kept winning in every tournament after that, until one day he came face to face with plot armor and had to fight Liu Kang. That boy was destined to win from the beginning. The writers are on his side. And honestly, losing to Liu Kang isn't even that big of an L because in the classic games, Liu Kang is almost unstoppable. In fact, while researching this video, I learned that Goro had one more canon fight around that time, and it took Jax, Sonya, and Kano all together to defeat him. So that tells you how strong Goro is and also lets you know how god tier Liu Kang is. So once again, getting bodied by Liu Kang is not that big of an L in my opinion, but Shao Kahn felt differently because he disrespected Goro big time, wouldn't even let the man compete in the next game. Instead, he replaced him with Kintaro, and that's way more disrespectful than you might think because Goro's race hates Kintaro's race. They're both Shokan, but they can't stand each other. So Shao Kahn essentially replaced Goro with his worst enemy. But now's the part where you want to fasten your seatbelt because the Goro hype train is about to crash into a wall. Because now we're talking about the Mortal Kombat movie, and I mean the first movie. In this film, Goro suffers a very embarrassing defeat to Johnny Cage. Nobody on earth can look you in the eye and say this fight wasn't shameful for your boy Goro. However, in his defense, this ain't just any Johnny Cage. This is movie Johnny Cage, who is way stronger than you might think. Just a few scenes earlier, he defeated Scorpion, and you can't even defend it. No Scorpion fan can say, oh, well, he was holding back. No, the man got killed. And he tried everything to get the W. He sent Johnny Cage to the Netherrealm, he used his fire breath, all that good stuff, and he still took the L. So once again, movie Johnny Cage is no joke. You could seriously make the argument that he's stronger than Shang Tsung in this movie. Because once again, Goro was hired because Shang Tsung couldn't get the job done, and he still took the L. Which means the only person stronger than Johnny Cage in this movie is Liu Kang, and that boy's carrying a heavy set of plot armor. And of course we know this because he defeated Reptile, who is of course the strongest character in Mortal Kombat fiction. But I'm getting off topic. My main point is that Johnny Cage is very strong in the Mortal Kombat movie, and on top of that, Goro mostly lost to gravity. I mean, the fall did most of the work when you think about it. So while the fight was shameful and it was a massive L, getting beaten by a god tier Johnny Cage does numb the pain a little bit. And thankfully there's a bit of a silver lining in the games that came afterwards, mainly Mortal Kombat Deception. In Goro's arcade ending, he basically bodies everybody with a small team of Shokan. We're talking an entire army of Edenians and Tarkatans, and Goro just steamrolls through all of them and then kills Katana on top of that. So once again, if you want a reminder of how strong Goro is supposed to be, there's your example. You can either have an entire army or you can have Goro, and I would take Goro Goro if I was you. But sadly, that's the end of the Midway era, and next up we have the Netherrealm Games, and here is where the disrespect slowly starts to creep in before diving off a cliff. Despite Mortal Kombat 9 following the story of the original 3 games fairly closely, Goro does take an extra L, losing to Cyber Sub-Zero. Even though he was double teaming the guy with Kentaro, don't ask me how Shao Kahn got those two to work together, but it wasn't enough. They still took the L, which you would think shows you how strong Cyber Sub-Zero is, but not only does he get clapped by Sindel, Kentaro himself also lost to a cop. Stryker handed that man his cheeks all by himself, so maybe Kentaro just sucks in the Netherrealm timeline. And sadly, nothing else happens for Goro in the Mortal Kombat 9 game. That's all he does. He shows up twice and loses both times. So now it's on to Mortal Kombat X, where the major disrespect begins, but you wouldn't know that unless you read the comics. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, so let's start off with the gameplay. Having Goro be playable is awesome, but making him a pre-order bonus, not as awesome. Although I think later on he was actually made free for everybody to play. I could be wrong on that though, and at least he wasn't bottom tier like Shao Kahn was for most of Mortal Kombat 11, so there's that. However, to make Goro play a bit more consistently and feel more balanced, he was made much smaller, and you could also throw him, unlike in previous games where the guy literally couldn't be thrown, so he is admittedly weaker and smaller in Mortal Kombat X, which does make sense for gameplay purposes. I'm glad he was fair and not broken, but it is still an L. I've got to put it on the board. But now's the part I mentioned earlier. The comics. Oh dear God, the comics. Things actually start off okay for Goro in the comics. He takes a couple of W's, even kills Kotal Khan's dad, but then the man straight up loses his arms. Yes, that's right, the 4 things that Goro's known for. Yeah, he can breathe fire too, but everyone knows Goro as the 4-arm guy, and now he has no arms. He's got nothing now. And your boy Kotal Khan doesn't even kill him. He leaves him like that and sends him back to his dad as an example of what happens when you roll up on the Aztec. Now, it is worth mentioning the Kotal Khan is on steroids in the comics, and when the comics came out, the game was not released yet, so we didn't know that Kotal Khan was gonna job to a random Shaolin monk, or that he would get bodied by his own girlfriend and then killed in the DLC expansion later on. We didn't know that Kotal Khan was that much of a joke yet. In the comics, he was cool, so him beating Goro wasn't that big of a deal, but now in hindsight, it's just super embarrassing, and it stings that much more. Because keep in mind, Goro was once so strong that even the best Shaolin warrior could not defeat him, and now he gets beaten by arguably the least respected of the Shaolin monks. At least when it comes to the player base. I don't know about the lore itself, they don't really say, but I assume he's not that big of a deal in the lore either. And next up, I know what you want me to talk about the most. You are clawing at your monitors, you want me to talk about the newest Mortal Kombat movie, and don't worry, we're getting to that, but first up, I want to talk about an L that no one really discusses, and that happens in Mortal Kombat 11, a game that Goro does not even appear in, so you would think he'd be safe, but nope, just like Reptile, he's still gonna get bodied. Because get this, in the Mortal Kombat X comics, despite losing his arms, Goro still somehow captures Kenshi. Yeah, I don't know how it happened either, but that's where the comic series finally ends. However, they had an entire second series planned, and if you want a full breakdown on that, then I highly recommend checking out History Behind the Warriors video. But I'm gonna keep things simple and only talk about Goro. So despite not having any arms, this man apparently defeats Frost in a fight, fights a bunch of Lin Kuei people in a fight, even outsmarts Sub-Zero. The man is still collecting W's, and the writer never specifies him having cybernetic limbs or anything, so I'm assuming he's just doing it with his nubs and he's still collecting wins. And if you're wondering why he's fighting the Lin Kuei, it's to get Onaga's egg, because he gets possessed by Onaga, and that's right, he becomes Onaga, but he retains his mind as Goro. Unlike Reptile in Deception, who just became Onaga himself, it seems like Goro is still in control. He's still piloting the ship, or at least the writer explains it that way, because he keeps referring to him as Goro and not Onaga. And he also keeps the 4 arms, by the way, so he has dragon wings and scales and the powers of Onaga, but he still has his 4 arms too. And then finally, there's this big epic climactic battle, and unfortunately we don't get to see any of it because the series did get cancelled. But anyway, how does any of this tie into Mortal Kombat 11? I bet that's what you're asking, because there are intro dialogues that mention Goro, but only one of them mentions Onaga and how he becomes Onaga. Literally every other intro is calling him dumb, stupid, arrogant, foolish, all that stuff. They're roasting him left and right. They barely even mention that he was the Dragon King. They just straight up roast Goro. They call him stupid, they call him arrogant, hot-headed, foolish, all that stuff. He's getting roasted left and right, and he's not even in the game, and he's dead. Just like Ferritor, one of my favorite characters by the way, Goro was killed off screen, and we don't even know how he died. So Netherrealm is just pouring salt on the wound if you're a Goro fan, because not only did you never get to read this amazing story about your favorite character, but then on top of that, he's being roasted over and over again in the character intros. You would think with a story that amazing being kind of mentioned in some intros that everybody would be talking about it, but no, they're roasting him for being dumb, dumb, arrogant, cocky, hot-headed, all that stuff. No one mentions like, yo, Goro was a dragon, that was sick. Once again, it's a massive L that nobody talks about because Goro's not in Mortal Kombat 11, but that does not make him safe from the writers. You're never safe from the writers. But now it's finally time, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, the Mortal Kombat movie. The new one that some people like and some people don't like. It's a bit divisive. People can't decide if it was okay, great, or terrible. However, there is one thing that everybody agrees on, and it's that Goro's appearance in the film is a disgusting disgrace to his legacy. Because if you think getting clapped by Johnny Cage was bad, imagine getting your cheeks handed to you by a character who is brand new and never been in any of the games. And then on top of that, this character is boring, almost nobody likes him, and it's even shown early on that he's not a good fighter. He loses to a random nameless character. So not only was Goro beaten by a complete nobody, but that character is shown to be a bad fighter. Wow, things could not get worse. And you can't even give the W to Gravity in this case. He was straight up beaten. It wasn't the fall that killed him. He was sliced and diced and humiliated for everyone to see. Why? Because the writers wanted you to love Cole. And for some reason, they thought the best way to do that was to kill off a fan favorite boss character from the very first game. Yeah, I don't get it either, but that's definitely why they did it. They wanted you to love Cole and see how strong he was, so they had him kill Goro. But to add insult to injury, I don't think this movie even mentions that Goro is the champion of Mortal Kombat and that he's won the previous tournaments. They mention that he's a prince, and I think that's it. Although I could be wrong, because admittedly, I have not watched this movie more than once. I don't hate it, but it's just not a rewatchable kind of movie. So as you can see, Goro truly is the most disrespected character in Mortal Kombat history, because he went from being the second strongest character in the entire series to a random nobody who was killed by a brand new character just so fans might like him. And then on top of that, he got replaced by a weaker version of himself in the DLC for Mortal Kombat 11, which is kind of like regular Coke losing to Diet Coke. It's just embarrassing. It just doesn't make any sense, and I don't think any normal company would be crazy enough to replace regular Coke with Diet Coke, but here we are because Netherrealm did just that. Don't get me wrong, I love Shiva as much as the next guy, but there was no reason to do him that dirty in the lore. Now to end this video, I do have one small favor to ask all of you watching. Please leave a like for your boy Goro and the respect he once had. Maybe, just maybe, if we get enough likes, we can restore this prince to his former glory. And then keep that combo going by subscribing and ringing that bell, that way you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.